There is only one player who can truly be considered the GOAT. It's not Ronaldo and it's definitely not Messi. His name is Antony Mateus dos Santos. He is the only player who scores a goal every time he finds the back of the net, the only player to play one match every 90 minutes, and the only player to ever win a Super Ballon d'Or. But at Manchester United, Antony was known for something very different. His fidget spinner skills, his ridiculous transfer fee, and most importantly, his complete failure to live up to expectations. And yet somehow, Antony went from being one of the most made fun of footballers on the planet to unironically becoming the greatest of all time. This is the story of how Antony accidentally became the GOAT. When Manchester United signed the Brazilian talent in the summer of 2022, they weren't exactly getting him for cheap. United paid Ajax around 95 million euros for the winger, making him one of the most expensive signings in Premier League history. And initially, things actually looked pretty promising. Antony scored on his Premier League debut against Arsenal before scoring again against Manchester City and Everton, becoming the first Manchester United player to score in each of his first 3 Premier League appearances. Signs of his greatness were already showing, but unfortunately for Antony, he would have to reach rock bottom first before eventually becoming the GOAT. Just a few weeks into his United career, Antony introduced the Premier League to his signature move, the fidget spinner. During a Europa League game against Sheriff Tiraspol, Antony received the ball with nobody around him, spun around with it twice before immediately passing it out of play. And Arne Slot's slightly more handsome twin subbed off Antony shortly after. Despite blessing the world with football's first 720 no-scope, Ten Hag was not impressed.
I don't have a problem with that as long as it's functional, but so also from him I demand more.
And while coach and pundits weren't exactly impressed with Antony's insane skills, football fans absolutely loved it, just not for the reasons Antony would have wanted. Someone said that it looked like the joystick got stuck for a second, and another said spin to win. And unfortunately, it wouldn't be the last time that Antony would become a meme, because after scoring those 3 goals in his first Premier League games, his performances started to fall off. He stopped scoring and the assists weren't coming either. And suddenly, that 95 million euro price tag started looking worse and worse. Antony became painfully predictable. He would receive the ball on the right wing, cut to his left foot, and pretty much everyone in the stadium knew exactly what was coming next. But as Antony's performances got worse, something strange started to happen. Football fans stopped just making fun of how bad he was and started pretending he was the greatest footballer of all time. Truly one of the greatest fake it until you make it situations ever. And these memes were Christopher Nolan levels of foreshadowing of what was to come. Antony wasn't competing with Messi and Ronaldo anymore. They were competing with him. Pictures of Antony holding Ballon d'Or started appearing. People started creating statistics explaining how Antony had played one game every 90 minutes. They would joke about how he would score every shot that went into the net and how they had to keep creating new trophies specifically for him because he was just that good. And eventually, Antony became more than just a footballer. Every facial expression became a meme, every celebration became a meme, and eventually Antony didn't even have to do anything anymore. His aura was so insane that people were mesmerized by him even if he was doing nothing. And the worse things got at Manchester United, the funnier the joke became. Because by his second season at the club, Antony wasn't just struggling to justify being one of the most expensive signings in Premier League history, he was struggling to score at all. Antony had only scored a single goal across 29 Premier League appearances. He went from scoring in his first 3 Premier League matches to only finding the back of the net once all season. And by the time his Manchester United career started coming to an end, the player they had paid nearly 100 million euros for had become one of the biggest punchlines in football, which makes it very easy to forget that Antony wasn't always a joke. Because only a few years earlier, some of Europe's biggest clubs believed that he could become one of the greatest wingers of all time. Before Antony was spinning his way into the heart of football fans, he was actually one of the most exciting young players in Europe. After joining Ajax from Sao Paulo in 2020 for around 60 million euros, Antony quickly became an important part of Erik ten Hag's team. And unlike at Manchester United, his skills were actually working. In 2 seasons at Ajax, Antony scored 24 goals and provided 22 assists across 82 appearances, helping the club win back-to-back Eredivisie titles. But more importantly, he was doing it while playing the exact kind of football that made him look like a future superstar. He was quick, confident, constantly taking defenders on, and even impressed in the Champions League. And the man watching all of this from the sideline was of course Erik ten Hag. So when Ten Hag left Ajax to take over Manchester United in 2022, he wanted to take Antony with him. Ajax didn't want to sell Antony, but United desperately needed a winger, and eventually they made Ajax an offer they couldn't refuse. 95 million euros, which might not sound a lot anymore since we're spending 156 bomboclat euros on Morgan Rogers, but at the time this was an insanely large price tag. And nobody could have predicted just how badly the next 2.5 years would affect Antony. Because behind all of the memes and jokes, Antony was genuinely struggling.
De não ter forças nem para brincar com meu filho, de ter dias ficar sem comer, de ficar no quarto. Então para mim foi muito complicado, mas
He even admitted that at his lowest point, he considered giving up entirely. Things needed to change for Antony and they needed to change fast. And in January 2025, he got a godsend. Real Betis agreed to take him on loan for the rest of the season, and almost immediately, Antony started cooking again. He made his Real Betis debut against Athletic Bilbao and was named man of the match. 1 week later against Celta Vigo, he scored his first goal for the club and was named man of the match again. Just 4 days after that, Antony made his European debut for the club against Gent, and again he found the back of the net. He's now scored 2 goals and was awarded 2 Man of the Match awards in 3 matches. This is the type of comeback that only the GOAT could pull off. After 2.5 years of banter, the GOAT allegations were becoming real. It felt like a self-fulfilling prophecy and the world enjoyed every moment of it. And this wasn't just 3 games where he got lucky. Quite the opposite, because Antony genuinely looked like a completely different player. He was taking defenders on again, creating chances, and he was playing with confidence. But most importantly, the ball was actually finding the back of the net again. The same Antony who had scored just 1 Premier League goal across his entire second season at Manchester United suddenly couldn't stop scoring. And just like Antony, Real Betis couldn't stop winning. With Antony and Isco leading the attack, Real Betis started climbing the La Liga table while simultaneously making a run through the Conference League. In the first leg, Antony received the ball outside of the box and banged it to the back of the net. Real Betis ended up winning the match 2-1, all thanks to Antony. But apparently one Antony screamer wasn't enough, because 1 week later in the second leg, he did it again. This time, Antony stepped up to take a free kick from outside the box and sent an absolute howler into the top corner. But Fiorentina fought back, eventually sending the game into extra time. There was only one man who could save them, Antony. He did what he does best, which is cook the defender, play an insane cross, and then win the match for his club. And for the first time in Real Betis' entire history, they were going to a European final. And Antony had scored in both legs of the semi-final before assisting the goal that sent them there. This was the same guy who just a few months earlier could barely get onto the pitch for Man United. He went from being known as the $95 million flop who was doing spins on the pitch to finding his 2008 prime form again. And maybe the biggest difference wasn't tactical at all. At Manchester United, Antony had looked like a player terrified of making another mistake. At Real Betis, he looked like someone who actually enjoyed playing football again. He had the trust of his managers, the fans loved him, and for the first time in years, Antony looked confident again. In just half a season at Real Betis, Antony scored 9 goals and provided 5 assists. He helped them finish 6th place in La Liga and played a massive role in taking them to their first European final in club history. In the span of just 4 months, Antony had gone from being one of football's biggest jokes to becoming one of Real Betis' most important players. And instead of making jokes about his aura, now the entire world suddenly felt it every time he stepped onto the pitch. And apparently, 4 months of Antony was enough to convince Real Betis of something football fans had known for years, that he was the GOAT and that they needed him permanently. Unfortunately for them, there was one slight problem. Antony still belonged to Manchester United, and after his loan ended, the GOAT was forced to return to the place that had nearly destroyed his career. But this time, Antony knew exactly where he wanted to be, and after a summer of negotiations, Real Betis finally made it happen. On September 1st, 2025, Antony permanently left Man United and signed for Real Betis until 2030. United had originally spent 95 million euros to sign him, but 3 years later they sold him for around 22 million euros plus add-ons. While Man United were cutting their losses, Real Betis were getting the player they had watched resurrect his career just a few months earlier. And Antony immediately proved that his first 6 months in Spain were not a fluke. Because of course, he got even better. Across the 25-26 season, Antony scored 14 goals and provided 9 assists in 42 appearances, a total of 23 goal contributions. For comparison, Antony had scored just 12 goals across his entire Man United career. And he wasn't just farming goals and aura against random La Liga teams either. In the Europa League, he scored 6 goals and provided 3 assists in just 10 appearances. And Antony still wasn't finished. Real Betis went on to finish 5th in La Liga, qualifying for the Champions League for the first time in over 2 decades. And while some people might credit the rest of the team, we all know it was due to Antony's aura. The Man United flop had gone to Spain, resurrected his career, helped take Betis to their first European final, and then carried them all the way back to the Champions League. The player who had become a meme for doing practically nothing at Man United was now one of the biggest stars on a Champions League club team. Somewhere along the way, Antony started living up to the memes. He went from being a prisoner at Man U who had lost his love for football to finding a club where he was loved, becoming one of their most important players, and taking them to the biggest competition in club football. Fans spent years pretending that Antony was the greatest player of all time without knowing that eventually he would become just that, the GOAT.